Hello viewers, I'm Ron Grant coming to you live and direct from Tortola in the Virgin Islands. Much has transpired over the past few months within the territory of the Virgin Islands. Of course, the ongoing COI recommendations are included in that. One of the persons locally who is lending his voice and continues to do that as it pertains to the change needed to take the territory forward is former Deputy Premier of these Virgin Islands, Dr. Kedrick Pickering. He's joining us to have a discussion on what he thinks is needed for the way forward. We'll be right back after a quick commercial break.
Introducing a show poised to help guide modern-day men into 21st century distinguished gentlemen. It doesn't always involve suits and bow ties, but raw, real-life lessons. I'm taking you outside in the field to share the journey of some of the BVI's the best and brightest men. From East End to West End, Virgin Gorda to Jos Van Dyke, not forgetting Anegada. Our Virgin Islands gentlemen are doing the damn thing. We are the movers and shakers of this generation. The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman. Season 4 by yours truly, Ron Grant. Raising a generation of greatness. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on 284 Media.
The wait is over. CCT Fire is here. Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire. Bring it home and upgrade today.
Viewers, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking with us. As promised, I am today joined by Dr. Kedrick Pickering, the former Deputy Premier of these Virgin Islands. Dr. Pickering, welcome back to our studios, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. As I mentioned in the introduction, a lot has transpired and taken place throughout the territory within the last few months. Of course, the awaiting of the COI recommendations and then receiving these recommendations and the implementation of such. Before we get into your thoughts on the way forward, you have been one of the persons who have been lending your voice recently as it pertains to not only our relationship with the United Kingdom, but also on the political climate. You have served, as I mentioned, as the Deputy Premier of these Virgin Islands and had quite some time in a political career spanning over 2 decades. Why now? Why have you decided to return to this platform and offer yourself of service once again to the people of this territory?
Well, Ron, once again, let me say thanks for having me. And, you know, it's an interesting question because it's something that I pondered for a while when the many persons that I've met along the way over the last several years have been saying to me that I should consider getting back into politics, that I should run again. Country needs some experienced persons, some persons with knowledge of how this thing works, etc., etc. And as events have unfolded over the last 2 years, but most specifically over the last year and a half with the COI, the conduct of that investigation and subsequently the report, it has put the BVI in somewhat of a difficult place. And I hear it almost on a daily basis, Ron, that we're at a point in our history where we need a few more experienced people to be able to deal with the magnitude of the issues, the difficulties that we have to face, not only in the present circumstances, but in the future. And so after much soul searching, I say, you know, I think I should at least get involved in the debate and lend my voice. I'm sure, Ron, you would have heard this saying that the only way for evil to prosper is for good men to keep quiet. And I
Indeed.
always tell myself that the one thing I wouldn't want to happen to me is that in later years, my children and my grandchildren would say to me, Daddy, where were you when all of this was happening? You know, I would love them to be able to say, at least my daddy tried.
Understood.
And that's where I am at this point in time.
With that being said, and having provided, of course, I think your experience speaks for itself as it pertains to leadership and serving in public office. Given that level of experience and years of experience, at present, what are some of the major concerns of yours, Dr. Pickering, as it pertains to our country and moving the territory forward?
I think the obvious, Number one is our relationship with the United Kingdom at this point in time. And that not only overshadows just about everything that is happening right now, it overshadows our daily lives, the present, and the immediate future. And if I may say, our long-term future. Because as I said in a political forum a couple of weeks ago, it's time for us to reset. And when I speak about reset, I mean it in a number of ways. I said that we need to reset our relationship with the United Kingdom. We need to reset our approach to our politics. And we certainly need to reset our way with respect to moving forward. But more than anything else, Ron, I think it's important for us as a people to start resetting our own thinking. Primarily, we've got to sit and ask our individual selves, what is it we really want for our country? Where do we want to see our country go? What direction we want this country to move in? Where do we want to be in a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years, 20, 25 years from now? Where would we like to see our country? And the only way we are going to be able to do that is to reset our thinking. We've got to think about the future of this country, what it is that we're going to pass on to our children. What are we going to leave them? We can't just go along willy-nilly and expecting things to work out. They're not going to work out. We've got to set a plan, an agenda, and have a clear vision forward of what we want to do with our country. And then, when we do that and put our brightest minds together, we can come up with a way forward. But it isn't going to happen with the same level of thinking that we've got us here. We've got to rethink. And when I speak about reset, that is one of the most important things I speak about. We've got to rethink where we are, do an analysis of how we got here, what brought us here, where are we right now? That is a very critical question. We, as a people, have got to ask ourselves. We've got to ask ourselves individually, but we've got to ask ourselves collectively, where are we right now? Because if we don't do that analysis, it'd be almost impossible for us to be able to sit and say, this is the direction we want to go. We've got to know where we are after we understand what brought us to where we are.
Speaking of the best and brightest minds, Dr. Pickering, at your most recent presentation in the Long Look Sticket, you announced to the people of the 7th District, and by extension the people of the territory of the Virgin Islands, that you will be contesting the next general election as an at-large candidate. Speak to the change in representing persons on a larger scale versus 7th District representation, which you've done for many years, to now broadening that to an at-large candidate. Why the switch?
Good question, Ron. When I made that announcement on the 8th of April, the country was in a different state of affairs at that point in time. COI wasn't presented, and then we're all familiar with what happened on the 28th of April. And since that historical moment, things in the BVI have changed dramatically, and most of us are still trying to figure out what has happened. What does it mean for us, and where do we go from here? And so quite a number of persons started encouraging me to think more of the bigger issues confronting the country, and that I should consider maybe running at large so that I could then dedicate myself to the bigger issues of the country rather than just having to concentrate on the district issues. And I'm sure you like myself and many others, hear the refrain almost every single day. We need a few experienced, knowledgeable persons to be involved with the affairs of the country at this point in time. And being one of those persons who have, significant amounts of experience about the various issues, I started thinking about it. And over time, in conversations with persons whom I respect, and of course my own family, I came to the point where I realized that it probably would be better for me at this point in time to serve the country at this level. And as the election campaign evolves, it also gives me the opportunity to speak to the broader issues during the campaign and to help persons to understand where we are. One of the things that I'm really, really serious about at this point in time, one of the things that keeps me up at night is to try and get all people to understand the gravity of the situation that we find. And I have to use a medical analogy here, Ron, because sitting in my office as a physician and the patient complains to me of a particular issue, it is my responsibility to try and figure out what is causing the problem. It's referred to as a symptom. What is causing the symptom that the individual is complaining about? So if somebody was complaining of pain, the pain just doesn't exist in the free air. Something is causing the pain. It is our responsibility to figure it out. And that's why we would then do various tests, bloods and x-rays and ultrasounds and MRIs and things to be able to sort out what the underlying problem is. Because unless we can sort the underlying problem, we'll find it very difficult to be able to really cure the problem. Otherwise, we just be putting a bandage on a sore. And using that analogy, Ron, and against the background of where we find ourselves at this point in time in our history with this COI and with the United Kingdom breathing down our neck, it forces people like me to really and truly, take a deep look at where we are and try to get our people to understand that these are serious times. We can't just sit back and think this is a Sunday afternoon picnic. Otherwise, we could literally lose our country in the process if we don't understand the seriousness of where we are at this point in time.
I'm happy, Dr. Pickering, that you mentioned the evolution of the campaign. I have a few questions as it pertains to that. We of course, know of your experience, and many persons would say that at this time we do need experienced leadership. But on the flip side, there are also many persons in the country who would say we need a fresh start, we need some young blood. What do you say to the voters and the persons within the territory that believe that there is an entirely need for an entire shift when it comes to the political climate, which would in some cases perhaps exclude persons like yourself?
That can't work, Ron. I mean, I think any right-thinking person can see right now that the country is in a position where it needs a few persons who understand not just local issues, Ron, but the major international issues that we have to confront. I'm one of those who believe that, and I said this on the campaign trail in Long Look, that I will support a new person running in the district if that happens to be the case. We have a one-term, a representative who's there for one term, and the unity government is made up entirely of younger persons. And so we have to ask ourselves if this is where we are, this is the direction we want to go. That is an analysis that all of us have to do. And the issue of a fresh start, of course we need a fresh start. We need a fresh start, as I said, because we need to reset. We need to rethink. And in that entire process, Ron, we need all minds involved. This is not, I will never sit and tell somebody we need 13 experienced people to run this country. No. And I would not say that we need 13 fresh people to run this country either. We need a good mix of persons who are able, willing, qualified, and genuinely committed to run the country. That's the only way we're going to move forward. Moving forward means that we've got to put our best minds together. An idea, a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter where it comes from, whether young or old. But there's wisdom in experience. And at this point in time, I think all of us agree that there is a need, a specific need, to have a few persons who can help guide the ship forward from where we are into the direction that we think it should go. But it has to be a collective effort. All hands has to be on deck. And I said before, I'll say it again, that the upcoming election campaign means that each and every single person in this country who can vote has a responsibility to be involved in the process. This is an election where we should have 100% turnout at the polls because people are so seriously committed to seeing our country do well. I sincerely believe that this country is ordained for greatness. I believe that with all my heart. But we've got to reset right now. Now is the opportunity, because this country can easily fall over the cliff if we make the wrong move. And we can only do that if collectively we work together. And collectively means we want experience, we want youngsters, and we want in-betweeners. They say no election campaign where we're going to put one set of people in there and think that we're going to move it forward. We need a complete reset and rethinking of where we ought to be going.
Speaking of 100%, the possibility of 100% voter turnout, are you concerned, Dr. Pickering, that at this stage in the campaign, with an election, a general election in sight, which it should be in sight, that we are seeing a very few candidates like yourself, whether experienced or new candidates, come to the forefront and offer themselves of service?
Of course I'm concerned. And I'm so concerned, that's why I've offered myself. It's easy to sit on the sideline, Ronn, and complain. It's easy to sit on the sideline and criticize. You know, there's a saying that there has never been a monument erected for a critic. And the easiest thing to do in this world is to blame and criticize and try to tear down. But, you know, the distinguished educator, Dr. Charles Whitley, has a saying that he crafted. It's called crab antics, where we as a people just like to be pulling each other down, tearing each other down, crabs climbing over each other like crabs in a barrel. We've got to get past that mentality, and we've got to be able to fight for this country, and it means that each one has to do his part. And so I'm concerned that there hasn't been more public debates, more public forums to move. Our election just about six, seven months away. And may I pause for a moment, Ron, to say this, and if I lose my train of thought, bring me back on that
Sure.
question you were asking. But let me pause to say right at this point in time, there is a very real possibility in this country that the United Kingdom might decide to take over this country. There's a very real possibility. And I want to raise my voice so people can understand that we must not sit back and allow the United Kingdom to suspend our constitution. We must be careful. The governor issued a warning the other day telling our government what they must do and what they mustn't do. We must not take it lightly. It is a warning sign that we must pay attention to. Just like I said earlier, you know, I tell my patients pain is a good thing because it tells you something is wrong. That warning is something that we should heed. We should heed it from the point of view that we must not allow the United Kingdom to suspend our constitution. An election is due 6 to 8 months from now, and we must get involved in the process, all of us, and ensure that we go to the polls, that we have an election and go to the polls and elect persons who can run our country, because we have the ability to run this country and to make it a model for other countries to see. We've made mistakes, but this is the time now to correct those mistakes and ensure that we set the pieces right and the platform for the future development of this country. So of course I'm concerned that we haven't had more debate, but I'm also concerned enough that I've offered myself publicly, and I will continue to do my part, because I will live with a conscience that is clear and free that I did my part, and when it was time to stand up, I stood up.
Dr. Pickering, thank you so much for those sentiments. When we look at the territory of the Virgin Islands, who has been a leading example in the financial services sector across the region and otherwise as well, what do you think it speaks to the rest of the region as it pertains to the Virgin Islands' tenacity and ability to move forward in spite of what all we've been through? When we look at our regional counterparts, and of course you would be in conversation with many of them, let's take our Virgin Islands and include it, of course, with the regional aspects. What exactly, you mentioned about the voters being concerned about the possible UK takeover and the suspension of the Constitution, but at this very critical point, which you've so eloquently described, what exactly should our region be paying attention to as it pertains to not only the Virgin Islands, but when you look at some of the issues, they're not all isolated. The relationship with the UK is one that many British overseas territories have questioned within conversation over the past few months as well, leading way and giving the BVI as a prime example. What should we be paying attention to as a region, especially when it comes to collaboration and support of each other?
Randy, we have to go back to first principles. We've got to ask ourselves the very difficult question. And it may sound monotonous, but it is because it's real, it's true. We've got to ask ourselves, what do we want for our country? Our country has the real possibility of becoming a model in so many ways. We've demonstrated that we have the ability by building a world-class financial services. And in not too distant past, we had a tourism industry that was blossoming into one of the models. There were other Caribbean countries were coming to the BVI to try to understand what it is that the BVI was doing that advanced it. But the foundation is already there. And it is for us now to rethink, stop and reset, to be able to say, how do we move forward? How do we build from where we were? We made mistakes and we had some major setbacks with the hurricanes, the floods, and then of course the pandemic, and then more recently with the Commission of Inquiry and the COI report and the events that took place on the 28th of April. All of those have set us back. But what I see, Ron, I don't see obstacles. I see opportunities. I see challenges, but I see opportunities. I see opportunities for us to turn whatever has happened to us into good. Because nothing that is worth having in this life is going to come easy. You've got to work for it. You've got to fight hard to get it. And that's where we are right now. And because we've demonstrated to the region and to the world the work that we've done in the environmental space, promoting the wider issues with respect to environmental conservation and environmental sustainability, the work we've done to raise awareness amongst the small island development states and the organization, the international organization called GLISPA, to help the bigger countries be aware of climate change and what climate change means to us as smaller countries, especially small island development states. All of those issues, when we combine them together, speaks volume as to exactly what we can achieve. And when Mr. Stout, way back in 1967, embarked on a journey of educating his people, he saw that if we were going to move forward, we needed to educate our people. And we've come a long way in terms of the education of our people. And it is now that we must utilize all the skills and resources that are at our disposal to be able to do the things that are necessary to advance this country. But we have got to start from the principle of rethinking what it is we want for our country. Put our minds together and then move forward. We can't just do it by thinking it can happen. It can't just happen. We've got to make it happen.
That is fair enough, Dr. Pickering, and I want to thank you so much for your honesty and your heartfelt plea in regards to us saving our territory. I do believe that in the final analysis, we all want a better society for our children. We want a better society where we can have economic growth and development, and I think that holistically moving forward, it will also always take all hands on deck. Dr. Pickering, in the final analysis, when we look in hindsight 2020, what do you want for your Virgin Islands?
I want us to live to our true potential, which, as I've said continually over the years, and I continue to say, this little country was ordained for greatness. I believe sincerely that we can build a great little nation. There's a reason why, so many wealthy people come to visit the BVI. We've been blessed with tremendous natural beauty. And it is important for us to not take our blessings for granted. It is for us to build on what we have. When I was growing up, I used to be able to talk about the BVI don't have any natural resources, the BVI don't have this, and the BVI don't have that. The BVI has an infinite resource in the environment. All we have to do is add value to it, and we will continue to reap bounties beyond our imagination. There's a terminology called the blue economy. And I've written a couple of articles and I've spoken in many different forums about the blue economy. It is something that the BVI has invested in without even knowing that the term existed. And we need to just continually invest in it, because the more we invest in it, the more we add value to our environment, is the more we are going to reap tremendous amount of rewards. Because this natural resource that we have in the environment is what fuels our tourism economy. We've been able to educate our people, and we've been able to create a financial services industry that is a cog in the wheel of the wider world financial system. And we play a little part in our own way from where we sit. And that didn't happen by chance. It happened on the backbones of our people who have been educated, have been out in the world, and have been able to see a way forward. And I believe, Ron, as I sit here with you today, that there are a couple of young BV Islanders with brilliant ideas. I believe that there are 2 or 3 good ideas out there that are going to take this country into the greatness. We just have to harness those ideas. And by opening up the debate and having more discussions and inviting people to share their views, I can see those ideas just come into fruition. And this BVI will then continue to grow and move in the direction that it was ordained to grow. I believe that with all my heart and soul, and I'm prepared to do my little part, whatever that is, to help advance this country to the greatness that I believe it can achieve.
Dr. Pickering, I want to thank you once again for your time and lending your voice to the causes and concerns that have been challenging us, of course, over the past few months and by extension the past few years. We do extend an invitation to you to always come, and of course, as we continue to chart the trajectory forward in regards to our territory and of course making sure that we are working together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks for having me. Happy to join you again.
You're most welcome, viewers. That's all the time. Do have a beautiful rest of the day. Reporting for 284 Media, Ron Grant.